The Virginia countryside rolled past in endless waves of green and gold, the late afternoon sun painting everything in shades of amber. 10-year-old Emma Grace Sullivan pressed her face against the school bus window, watching the familiar landscape blur by. Her backpack sat heavy on her lap, filled with books she hadn't read and homework she hadn't done. But Emma's mind wasn't on school. It was on the secret place. Emma Grace Sullivan was small for her age, all sharp angles and skinny limbs, with a wild tangle of copper-red hair that her grandmother said came from her Irish roots. Her face was dusted with freckles, and her eyes, a startling, vivid blue, held an intelligence and awareness that made adults uncomfortable. She saw too much. She understood too much. And in a world that had taken almost everything from her, she'd learned to trust very little. The bus groaned to a stop at the rural intersection where County Road 14 met the old railway spur. Emma was the only student who got off here, a fact that used to embarrass her, but now she wore like armor. She lived with her grandmother in a weathered farmhouse a mile down the dirt road, far from town, far from other kids, far from everything. "See you Monday, Emma," the bus driver called, her voice artificially cheerful. Emma nodded but didn't speak. She hadn't spoken much since her parents died 2 years ago. Not because she couldn't. The therapist her grandmother had taken her to had confirmed there was nothing physically wrong, but because words felt pointless. Words hadn't saved her mom and dad when their car went off the bridge. Words hadn't brought them back. So, Emma saved her words for when they mattered. She waited until the bus disappeared around the bend before she turned, not toward the farmhouse, but toward the abandoned rail yard. The rail yard had been dead for 20 years, ever since the freight company went bankrupt and left everything to rot. Now it was just rusted tracks, crumbling platforms, and a dozen old train cars slowly being reclaimed by kudzu and wild roses. The county had fenced it off with chain link and no trespassing signs, but there was a gap in the fence that Emma had found months ago. It was her secret place, the one spot in the world where she felt like she could breathe. She slipped through the gap, her small frame easily navigating the twisted metal, and made her way down the overgrown tracks. The rail yard was silent except for the wind moving through the tall grass and the distant call of crows. Emma loved the silence. It was honest. It didn't pretend to care. She had claimed one of the old boxcars as her own, a rusty red one with fading letters that once spelled Norfolk Southern. Inside, she had created a sanctuary, a milk crate for a chair, an old blanket stolen from the farmhouse, a flashlight, and a collection of books she'd rescued from the library's discard pile. This was where she came to read, to think, to be alone. But today, as Emma approached her boxcar, she stopped. The door was closed. She always left it open a crack, partly for ventilation, partly because the hinges were so rusted that closing it all the way was nearly impossible. But now it was sealed shut, the heavy metal door pulled tight. Emma's heart began to pound. Had someone found her place? Were there teenagers in there, drinking and breaking things like they did in the other abandoned buildings around town? She crept closer, her sneakers silent on the gravel. She pressed her ear against the cold metal of the boxcar, and she heard it. A sound, low, almost imperceptible, a rhythmic huffing, like breathing but strained, painful, then a whimper, definitely animal, definitely distressed. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Emma's fear evaporated, replaced by something else. Concern. She knew what suffering sounded like. She had heard her grandmother cry late at night when she thought Emma was asleep. She had heard her own voice, raw and broken, screaming for her parents at the funeral. Someone, something, in her boxcar was in pain. She grabbed the edge of the heavy door and pulled. It didn't budge. She braced her feet and pulled harder, using all her weight. The door groaned, metal scraping against metal, and slowly, inch by agonizing inch, it began to slide open. Light spilled into the dark interior, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. Inside the boxcar were 4 figures. 2 men, both large and muscular, were zip-tied to the metal support beams on opposite sides of the car. Their hands were bound behind their backs, their ankles tied together. Both wore dark clothing, tactical pants, compression shirts, now torn and stained with blood. Their faces were battered, bruised, one man's eye swollen completely shut. They were conscious, but barely, their heads hanging forward. And beside each man, also bound with heavy chains, were 2 dogs, German shepherds, massive, beautiful animals with intelligent eyes and bloodied fur. They were muzzled with crude wire contraptions that had cut into their snouts. Both dogs were alert, their eyes tracking Emma's movement, low growls vibrating in their chests, not threatening, but warning, protecting. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her mind trying to process what she was seeing. Then one of the men, the one with short, cropped blonde hair and a deep gash across his cheek, lifted his head. His eyes, a piercing gray even through the pain, focused on her. "Run," he croaked, his voice like gravel. "Kid, run, get help." Emma didn't run. She stared at him, then at the other man, then at the dogs. "Who did this to you?" Her voice was small but clear, the first word she'd spoken to a stranger in months. The blond man tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Bad people. They'll come back. You need to. Are you going to hurt me?" Emma interrupted. The question seemed to surprise him. He held her gaze, and despite the pain etched into every line of his face, his voice was steady. "No, never. But the people who did this, they will. Please, run." Emma looked at the dogs. They had stopped growling. One of them, the larger one with a black and tan coat, was watching her with an expression she recognized. It was the same look her grandmother had when she was worried about Emma. These dogs weren't dangerous. They were scared. Emma took a step into the boxcar. "What are you doing?" the blond man gasped. "Kid, listen to me. My name is Emma," she said firmly, "and I'm not leaving you here." 24 hours earlier, at Naval Amphibious Base, Little Creek, Virginia, 2 of the Navy's most elite operators were about to make a decision that would change everything. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reaper Dalton and Chief Petty Officer David Havoc Chen stood in the team room of SEAL Team 6, staring at a classified briefing packet that had just been hand-delivered by a civilian contractor neither of them recognized. Marcus Dalton was 38 years old, a 15-year veteran of naval special warfare with a record that read like a legend. He was tall, 6'3", with the kind of build that came from a lifetime of pushing human limits. His hair, blonde going gray at the temples, was cropped military short. His face was weathered, scarred, and carried the permanent tan of a man who had spent years operating in deserts and jungles. His call sign, Reaper, had been earned in Ramadi during a 48-hour firefight where he'd single-handedly held a position against overwhelming odds. He was a warrior scholar, a man equally comfortable breaching doors and briefing generals. David Chen was 32, compact and explosively powerful, built like a middleweight boxer. He was Chinese-American, born in San Francisco, and had grown up fighting, first in the streets, then in the Marines, and finally in the SEALs. His call sign, Havoc, came from his specialty, close-quarters battle. When things went loud and fast, David was the man you wanted at your six. He was also Marcus's closest friend, the brother he'd chosen, the man he trusted with his life. Beside each operator sat their K9 partners. Marcus's dog was Khan, a massive German shepherd with a black saddle and intelligent amber eyes. Khan was 5 years old, 75 pounds of trained muscle and loyalty. He was certified in explosives detection and tactical assault, but more than that, he was Marcus's shadow. They had deployed together 4 times: Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, and an operation in Eastern Europe that would remain classified for the next 30 years. Khan understood commands in 3 languages and could read Marcus's body language better than most humans could read words. David's dog was Havoc, named ironically after his handler, a slightly smaller German shepherd with a rich tan coat and dark, watchful eyes. Havoc the dog was a search and rescue specialist, trained to find hidden explosives, trapped personnel, and track targets across impossible terrain. He was 3 years old, still young and eager, with an enthusiasm that occasionally got him in trouble. David loved him fiercely. Both dogs sat at perfect attention, watching their handlers, waiting for the command that would release them from their discipline. "This doesn't feel right," David said, flipping through the briefing packet for the 3rd time. A civilian contractor delivering a mission brief? No chain of command approval? No official tasking? Marcus was reading the technical specifications with a growing sense of unease. It's a recovery operation. Supposedly, a high-value intelligence asset was taken during a logistics convoy ambush near Norfolk. The asset is being held at a civilian location, an abandoned rail yard, pending transfer to a hostile foreign power. And they want us to recover it, alone, no backup, no official sanction. David looked up. "This is either Black Ops Black or it's a trap," Marcus finished. "Yeah, I'm seeing that too." They sat in silence for a moment. Khan shifted, sensing his handler's tension. Marcus reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears, a gesture that calmed them both. "We should kick this upstairs," David said. "Let command sort it out. The briefing says time critical. Asset moves in 6 hours. By the time we go through channels." Marcus trailed off. "An American intelligence officer dies," David finished. They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. They were SEALs. They didn't wait for permission to do the right thing. They acted. "Full tactical load," Marcus said finally. "We go in, assess, extract if viable. First sign this is sideways, we abort and call in the cavalry." "And if it's a trap?" Marcus smiled, a cold, dangerous expression. "Then someone's about to learn why they shouldn't fuck with the teams." They were warriors. They were operators. They were the best of the best. And they were about to walk straight into an ambush designed specifically to destroy them. The operation had been textbook perfect, until it wasn't. Marcus and David, along with Khan and Havoc, had infiltrated the rail yard at Odo 200 hours, moving through the shadows like ghosts. Their intelligence had directed them to a specific boxcar at the far end of the yard, the one marked Norfolk Southern in faded red letters. They approached with tactical precision, weapons up, dogs on point. Khan alerted first, a slight tensing of his body that Marcus felt through the leash. Not explosives, people. Marcus signaled David. 4 hostiles, positions marked. They moved to breach. The boxcar door slid open before they could touch it, and everything went wrong. The flashbang grenades came first, multiple, simultaneous, perfectly placed. Marcus and David, with their night vision goggles, were instantly blinded. The sound was a physical force, disorienting, deafening. Then came the net guns, military grade, designed for subduing large animals or humans without lethal force. The weighted nets wrapped around Marcus and David, tangling their weapons, their arms, bringing them down hard. Khan launched himself at the nearest attacker, his training taking over. He got his jaws around the man's arm, heard the satisfying crunch of bone before the taser hit him. 50,000 volts. The dog collapsed, convulsing. Havoc tried to run, to escape and get help, but a second net took him down. Through the ringing in his ears, Marcus heard voices. American voices, professional, calm. Target secured. Dogs neutralized but alive. Proceed to Phase 2. Marcus tried to fight, tried to reach his backup weapon, but there were too many of them. He felt the zip ties bite into his wrists, felt his weapons being stripped away. The last thing he saw before the hood went over his head was Khan, lying still on the ground, his chest barely rising. And then everything went black. When they woke, they were in the boxcar, bound and beaten. Hours had passed. The sun was up, visible through the cracks in the walls. Marcus's head throbbed and his ribs screamed with every breath, at least 2 cracked, maybe broken. Across from him, David was in worse shape. His left eye was swollen shut, and blood matted his dark hair. Khan and Havoc were chained beside them, both dogs still muzzled, both watching their handlers with eyes that held pain and confusion and unwavering loyalty. "David," Marcus croaked, "you with me?" "Unfortunately," David responded, his voice thick. "What? What the hell was that?" "Professional hit," Marcus said, his mind already working through the tactical problem. "They knew we were coming. They knew our capabilities. This was planned. Why not just kill us?" That was the question Marcus had been asking himself. Because we're worth more alive, either as bargaining chips or someone wants to make an example, David finished. Public execution. Message to the teams. Marcus tested his bonds. Zip ties, industrial grade, cutting into his wrists. His ankles were bound to the support beam. He could probably break free given time and effort, but time was something they might not have. "Khan," he said softly. "Easy, boy. I'm okay." The dog's tail twitched once, a sign that he heard, that he understood. "We need to get out of here," David said, "before they come back." Agreed. But even if we break free, we're unarmed, injured, and we have to carry 2 70-pound dogs who can barely walk. We need help. From who? No one knows we're here. This was off book. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his mistake. He had walked into this. He had brought David and their dogs into a trap because he'd been too arrogant to see it. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "This is on me." "Save it," David responded. "We both made the call. We both walked in. Now we both figure out how to walk out." They spent the next hour testing their bonds, trying to work the zip ties loose, but whoever had secured them knew what they were doing. The ties were too tight, positioned perfectly to prevent leverage. The sun climbed higher. The boxcar became an oven. Dehydration was setting in. Khan whimpered, a sound Marcus had never heard from him before. The dog was suffering. "Hold on, buddy," Marcus whispered. "Someone will come. Someone will find us." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. They were in an abandoned rail yard, bound and hidden, with no one looking for them. They were going to die here. And then, just when hope was fading, they heard it. The sound of the boxcar door being forced open, light spilling in, a small silhouette framed against the afternoon sun. A child, a little girl with wild red hair and fearless blue eyes, staring at them like they were a puzzle she needed to solve. "Run," Marcus had told her. "Get help." But Emma Grace Sullivan wasn't the running type. She was the type who ran toward trouble, not away from it. And in that moment, she became the most important asset in an operation that was about to shock an entire military base. Emma stood in the doorway of the boxcar, her small frame backlit by the afternoon sun, and studied the scene before her with an intensity that made Marcus reassess his initial assumption. This wasn't a scared little girl. This was someone who had already seen darkness and wasn't impressed by it. "You're soldiers," she said. It wasn't a question. "SEALs," David corrected automatically, then winced. "How do you—" "My dad was in the Army. Rangers, before he died." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact and clinical. "You have the same look, the same way of sitting even when you're tied up, like you're ready to fight." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. This kid had lost her father, a ranger. That meant she came from a military family. She understood the life. "Emma," Marcus said gently, using her name to establish connection, "I need you to listen very carefully. The people who did this to us are dangerous, very dangerous. If they come back and find you here, then I won't be here when they come back." Emma interrupted. She stepped fully into the boxcar, her eyes moving to Khan and Havoc. "Your dogs are hurt." "They'll be okay," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure that was true. "But we need to get them free. We need to get everyone free." Emma knelt down beside Khan. The dog tensed, a low growl starting. "Easy," Emma said softly. "I'm going to help." She reached out slowly, letting Khan smell her hand. The dog's growl faded. His tail thumped once against the floor. "Kid's got a gift," David muttered. Emma examined the wire muzzle cutting into Khan's snout. "This is cruel," she said, and there was steel in her young voice. "Who would do this?" "Bad people," Marcus said. "People we need to stop. But first, we need to get free. Emma, do you have a phone? Can you call 911? "My grandma doesn't let me have a phone," Emma said, still focused on Khan. "Says I'm too young. But I know where there's a phone. At the rail yard office. It's locked, but I can get in through the bathroom window." "Perfect," Marcus said, relief flooding through him. "Go there. Call 911. Tell them—" "Tell them what?" Emma looked up at him and her blue eyes were sharp. "Tell them there are 2 men tied up in a boxcar. They'll think I'm making it up. Or they'll take too long. Or—" She paused, her jaw setting in a way that reminded Marcus of every stubborn operator he'd ever worked with. "Or the bad people will come back before the police get here, and they'll hurt you worse." She was right. A child's 911 call about men in a boxcar would take time to verify, to dispatch, to respond. Time they might not have. "What are you thinking, Emma?" David asked. Emma stood up and walked over to Marcus. She examined his zip ties with the analytical eye of someone solving a problem. "My dad taught me things before he died. He said the world was dangerous and I needed to know how to take care of myself. He showed me how to pick locks, how to get out of restraints, how to survive." Marcus felt a profound respect for Emma's father, whoever he had been. He had prepared his daughter for a world without him. "Can you cut these?" Marcus asked. "Not cut, but there's a way to break zip ties if you do it right. Dad showed me." She looked around the boxcar, her eyes scanning for tools. I need something metal, something thin. David jerked his head toward the corner. My gear. They threw it over there. There's a multi-tool in the dump pouch. Emma found the tactical vest and began pulling items out with careful hands. She found the multi-tool and flipped it open, examining the various blades and implements. The file, David said. Use the metal file. If you can get through even one strand of the zip tie, I can break the rest. Emma came back and knelt behind Marcus. She was so small that she had to stand on her toes to reach his wrists. This is going to take a while, she warned. We've got time, Marcus lied. For the next 20 minutes, Emma sawed patiently at Marcus's restraints. The file was dull, the plastic thick, and her hands were small, but she didn't complain. She just worked, her breathing steady, her focus absolute. Khan and Havoc watched her, their tails occasionally thumping, as if encouraging her. Almost, Emma whispered. I can feel it weakening. You're doing great, Marcus said. Your dad would be proud. Emma's hands paused for just a second. You didn't know him? No, but I knew men like him. Rangers, warriors, men who taught their daughters to be strong. Marcus's voice was gentle. He gave you something important, Emma. He gave you the ability to save lives. The last strand snapped. Marcus felt the zip tie loosen. Got it, Emma said. Marcus immediately began flexing his wrists, working the zip tie, using his strength in the fractured plastic. With a sharp crack, the restraint broke. His hands were free. He brought them around front, his wrists raw and bleeding, and for the first time in hours, he felt hope. Good job, kid, he said, his voice thick with emotion. David was grinning despite his battered face. Okay, Reaper's free. Now, do me. But before Emma could move, they all heard it. The sound of vehicles, multiple engines, heavy trucks, coming fast. Marcus's blood turned to ice. They're back. The change in Marcus was instantaneous. The injured, restrained SEAL disappeared, replaced by the operator. His hands flew to his ankle restraints, his fingers working the knots with practiced speed. Emma, he said, his voice a command now. Under the boxcar. There's a gap beneath the wheels. Squeeze through and run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Get to your grandmother's house and tell her to call the police. Tell her to call Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek. Tell them SEAL team operators are down. Can you remember that? Emma's face had gone pale, but she nodded. Say it back to me, Marcus ordered. Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek. SEAL team operators are down. Good. Now go. Emma dropped to her stomach and began sliding toward the gap beneath the boxcar. She was small enough to fit, barely. David, still bound, was pulling frantically at his own restraints. Marcus, if you can get free, take Khan and run. Leave me. Come back with backup. Not happening, Marcus said, his fingers finally freeing his ankles. He stood, every muscle screaming, and moved immediately to Khan. The chains holding the dog were secured with a heavy padlock. Marcus grabbed the multi-tool Emma had dropped and began working on the chains themselves, looking for a weak link. The vehicle sounds grew louder. Doors slamming, voices, at least 4 men. They're coming to move us, David said, to the secondary location. That's when they'll kill us. Marcus knew he was right. This boxcar had been temporary holding. The real plan, whatever it was, would happen somewhere else, somewhere more private. He found a weak link in Khan's chain and began prying at it with the multi-tool, using all his strength. The metal began to bend, then warp. Come on, he growled. Come on. The chain snapped. Khan was free. Marcus immediately moved to the dog's muzzle, carefully unwinding the cruel wire. Khan whimpered as the metal pulled away from his wounds, but the moment his jaws were free, he licked Marcus's hand, a gesture of pure love and loyalty. "Havoc next," David said. "Forget me. Free the dogs and—" The boxcar door slammed open. 4 men entered, all armed with suppressed pistols, all wearing tactical gear. The lead man was tall, thick-necked, with a shaved head and cold eyes. He looked at Marcus, standing free, and smiled. "Well, well," the man said, his voice a deep rumble. "Looks like someone's been a busy little operator. But you're still trapped, Dalton. You make a move, we shoot the dog. Then we shoot your friend. Then we take our time with you." Marcus froze. The man had his pistol aimed directly at Khan's head. From that range, it was an impossible miss. "Smart," the man said. "I'm Garrett, and you and your boy Chen here have caused my employer a lot of trouble. Did you really think you could just operate on American soil without consequences?" "Who's your employer?" Marcus asked, his mind racing, looking for any tactical advantage. "Someone who's tired of SEAL Team cowboys thinking they're untouchable," Garrett said. "Someone who wants to send a message, and you two, you're going to be that message. A live-streamed execution of America's elite warriors, broken, defeated, killed like dogs." David spat blood. "You're going to regret this, Garrett. The teams will come for you. They'll burn your whole world down. By the time the teams figure out you're missing," Garrett said, "you'll be dead, and your bodies will be in pieces. Now," he gestured to his men, "get them loaded. Vehicles are ready." 2 men moved toward Marcus. One kept his weapon on Khan. Marcus saw the tactical problem. He could take maybe 1 man before the others fired, but Khan would die. David would die, and he'd die knowing he'd failed them both. Unless... Marcus's eyes flicked to the gap beneath the boxcar. Emma should be gone by now. She should be running, safe. But as one of Garrett's men stepped forward to secure Marcus's wrists, something small and fast shot out from beneath the boxcar. Not running away, running toward. Emma Grace Sullivan burst into the boxcar holding a rusted metal pipe she'd found in the rail yard. Before anyone could react, she swung it with every ounce of strength in her 10-year-old body, slamming it into the back of the nearest man's knee. The man howled, his leg buckling. His pistol went off, the suppressed shot wild, hitting the ceiling. It was the distraction Marcus needed. He moved like lightning. His first strike was a palm heel to the throat of the man closest to him, crushing his windpipe. The man dropped, gasping. Marcus took his pistol in the same motion and fired 2 rounds, center mass, into the man holding David's gun. Khan, finally free to act, launched himself at the man who had been threatening him. 75 pounds of trained attack dog hit the target in the chest, driving him backward out of the boxcar. They fell 6 feet to the gravel below, the man screaming as Khan's jaws found his arm. Garrett was fast. Ex-military himself, clearly. He pivoted, bringing his weapon around toward Marcus. Emma swung her pipe again, this time at Garrett's gun hand. Metal connected with bone. Garrett's pistol flew from his grip. Marcus shot him. 2 rounds, chest. Garrett went down. The entire engagement took less than 8 seconds. Silence fell over the boxcar, broken only by the sounds of harsh breathing and Khan's growling from below. Marcus immediately moved to David, using the knife from the dead man's belt to cut his restraints. "You good?" "Define good," David gasped, but he was already moving, freeing Havoc, removing the dog's muzzle with shaking hands. Marcus turned to Emma. The little girl stood in the center of the carnage, still holding her pipe, her face pale but her eyes clear. "I told you to run," Marcus said. "I don't run," Emma said simply. "My dad taught me that too. You don't leave people behind." Marcus knelt down in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. "Emma, what you just did, you saved our lives, all of us. You're the bravest person I've ever met." "Are they dead?" Emma asked, looking at the bodies. Marcus glanced at Garrett. Still breathing, but barely. The others were down, unconscious or worse. "Some of them, but that's not your fault. That's mine. You didn't kill anyone, Emma. You just gave us a chance to fight back." Emma nodded slowly, processing. Then, "There were 4 men. Only 3 are here. Where's the 4th? Marcus's blood ran cold. She was right. 4 men. He'd seen 4. The sound of an engine starting answered the question. The 4th man was running, heading for one of the vehicles. "He's going to get reinforcements," David said, grabbing a rifle from the dead man's gear. "Or call in air support. We need to move." Marcus looked at the weapons scattered around the boxcar. They were armed again, but they were still injured, still outnumbered overall, and they had 2 dogs and a little girl to protect. "We can't run," Marcus said. "Not far, not fast, and we're not leaving Emma exposed." "So what do we do?" David asked. Marcus looked at Emma, at this impossible, courageous child who had saved them when every tactical advantage had been against them. "We go loud," he said. "We call in the cavalry, and we hold this position until they arrive." He pulled out one of the dead men's tactical radios and switched it to the emergency frequency he'd memorized years ago, the one that went directly to Naval Special Warfare Command. "Broken Arrow," he said into the radio, using the code that meant American forces were in imminent danger, facing overwhelming odds. "This is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Dalton, SEAL Team 6. I have 1 operator, 2 K9s, and 1 civilian child in defensive position at coordinates." He rattled off the rail yard's location from memory. "We are engaged with hostile forces on U.S. soil. Request immediate QRF and air support. How copy?" The response came immediately, sharp and professional. "Dalton, this is Crystal Palace. We copy Broken Arrow. Confirm. You are engaged on U.S. soil?" "Confirmed. Ambushed during black operation. At least 6 hostiles, possibly more. 1 civilian child on site. Need immediate extraction. QRF is spinning up. ETA 20 mics. Can you hold?" Marcus looked at David, at Khan and Havoc, at Emma standing there with her pipe. "We'll hold," he said, "or we'll die trying." "Crystal Palace copies. Cavalry's coming. Keep this channel open. Air assets are 12 minutes out." Marcus clipped the radio to his belt and picked up one of the rifles. He did a press check. Round in the chamber, full magazine. Good. David was already setting up a defensive position, using cargo and debris to create cover. Emma watched them work. "What can I do?" Marcus handed her a radio. "You can be our lookout. You sit right here in the center where you're protected. If you see anyone coming, anyone at all, you tell us. Can you do that?" Emma took the radio with hands that barely trembled. "Yes." "Good." Marcus looked at Khan. The dog was favoring his left side, probably bruised ribs from the taser, but his eyes were alert and focused. "Khan, guard." He pointed to Emma. The big German shepherd immediately moved to the girl's side and sat, a living shield. Emma reached out and put her hand on Khan's head. The dog leaned into her touch. "Havoc," David said, "perimeter watch." His dog moved to the open boxcar door, head swiveling, scanning for threats. Marcus checked his watch. 20 minutes until the quick reaction force arrived. 20 minutes to hold against an unknown number of hostiles who now knew their advantage was gone. It was going to be the longest 20 minutes of their lives. But as Marcus took his position at the defensive line, rifle shouldered, scanning his sector, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not because the danger was over, but because he was doing what he was born to do. Protecting the defenseless, standing the line, being the shield, and beside him, a 10-year-old girl with wild red hair and her father's courage was doing exactly the same thing. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. The first attack came 7 minutes after Marcus's broken arrow call. They heard the vehicles first, 2 of them approaching fast from the north entrance of the rail yard. The engines were loud, aggressive, the sound of men who didn't care about stealth because they believed they had overwhelming force. "Contact north," David called from his position at the boxcar door. 2 vehicles, looks like. 4 men per truck. 8 total. Marcus swore under his breath. 8 hostiles, and he and David were still operating on adrenaline and pain. Khan was injured. Havoc was young and had never been in live combat against human targets, and Emma, brave, impossible Emma, was a 10-year-old child who should be doing homework, not crouched in a firefight. "Emma," Marcus said, his voice calm despite the hammering of his heart, "remember what I told you. You stay low. You stay behind cover. No matter what happens, you don't move until I say. Understood?" "Understood," Emma said, her voice small but steady. Khan pressed tighter against her, his body a warm, solid presence. The vehicles stopped about 50 yards from the boxcar, just out of effective pistol range, but well within rifle distance. Doors opened, men emerged, all armed, all wearing tactical gear, and then a voice boomed across the rail yard, amplified by a bullhorn. "Dalton, Chen, this is Colonel Raymond Vickers, and you are currently engaged in an unauthorized domestic operation, have killed American citizens, and are holding a civilian child hostage. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated fairly under military law. Resist, and you will be terminated with extreme prejudice." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Colonel, this wasn't just some rogue contractor operation. This went up the chain. Way up. That name mean anything to you?" David asked quietly. "Yeah," Marcus said, his mind racing through classified briefings, faces at command meetings. "Raymond Vickers. Used to be Army Special Forces. Got drummed out 15 years ago for running illegal weapons to friendly militias in Iraq. Made a fortune as a private military contractor after that. Supposed to be legitimate now." "Supposed to be," David echoed. Marcus raised his voice, projecting across the rail yard without the benefit of a bullhorn. "Vickers, I'm a SEAL team operator. I've called in a broken arrow, and air support is 11 minutes out. You've got one chance to surrender before this becomes a federal incident that ends your career and your freedom." There was a pause. Then Vickers's voice came back, and this time Marcus could hear the smile in it. "You think the Navy's coming to save you, Dalton? I've got friends in Crystal Palace. Your broken arrow call is being reviewed as a potential false alarm. A psych eval issue from an operator with PTSD. By the time they decide to take it seriously, you'll be dead, and the evidence will show you were the aggressors. You and Chen went rogue, kidnapped a civilian child, and I was hired by her grandmother to rescue her." Emma gasped. "My grandma didn't—" "He's lying," Marcus said immediately. "It's a cover story. Ignore it." But the tactical situation was getting worse. Marcus keyed the tactical radio. Crystal Palace, Dalton. Confirm QRF is still inbound. Static. Then, Dalton, be advised your situation is under review. Stand by. Review? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. We have boots on the ground, taking fire from hostiles on U.S. soil, and you're reviewing? Orders from higher, Dalton. You're not officially on mission. The brief you were given was not authorized. Command is trying to sort out chain of responsibility. ETA for clarity is, we don't have one. David looked at Marcus, and in that moment they both understood. They'd been set up. The whole thing, the briefing, the mission, the ambush, it had all been designed to put them in an impossible position. Illegal domestic operation. Dead Americans who could be painted as victims. A kidnapped child as evidence of their instability. It was the perfect frame. We're on our own, David said quietly. Not entirely, Marcus said, looking at Khan, at Havoc, at Emma sitting there with absolute trust in her eyes. We've got each other. We've got our dogs, and we've got the truth. Truth doesn't stop bullets, David pointed out. No, Marcus agreed, but courage does. Vickers' voice boomed again. Last chance, Dalton. Send out the girl and surrender. You have 60 seconds. Marcus looked at Emma. What do you want to do? The question surprised her. What? This is your life, Emma. Your choice. If you walk out there, if you go to Vickers, maybe this ends without more violence. Maybe you're safe. Or maybe he kills me to make sure I can't tell anyone what really happened, Emma said, her blue eyes hard. My dad always said there were two kinds of men, sheepdogs and wolves. The wolves talk nice until they're close enough to bite. Colonel Vickers sounds like a wolf to me. Marcus smiled, a fierce, proud expression. Your dad was right, and he raised a sheepdog. Emma smiled back. So we stay? We stay. The 60 seconds expired. Vickers' response was immediate and professional. All units, green light, weapons free. The rail yard erupted in gunfire. The first volley was suppressive fire, dozens of rounds slamming into the boxcar, punching through the thin metal walls, ricocheting inside with deadly whines. Marcus threw himself over Emma, using his body as a shield. Khan positioned himself on her other side, his body pressed tight. David was returning fire, controlled bursts from his rifle, aiming for the vehicle engines, the tires, anything to limit mobility. They're trying to pin us. Classic assault pattern. Marcus crawled to the opposite side of the boxcar, found a firing position, and engaged. His first shot took out the front tire of the lead vehicle. His second shattered a windshield. His third found flesh, a hostile who had exposed himself too long. The man went down. But there were too many of them, and they were advancing, using fire and movement, bounding from cover to cover, getting closer with each rush. We can't hold this position, David yelled over the gunfire. They'll flank us. Marcus knew he was right. The boxcar was a trap now, surrounded on three sides. They needed better ground. His eyes swept the rail yard and found it. The old water tower, 30 yards to the west. It was stone and steel, built to last, with a platform 20 feet up that would give them high ground and 360-degree visibility. Emma, Marcus said, grabbing her shoulders, making her look at him, we're going to move. We're going to run to that tower. Khan will be with you. I'll be behind you. David will cover us. You don't stop. You don't look back. You just run. Okay? Emma's face was pale, but she nodded. Havoc, David commanded. Run with Emma. Protect. The young German shepherd immediately moved to Emma's other side. Marcus grabbed a smoke grenade from the dead man's gear and pulled the pin. "Smoke out!" He threw it hard toward the advancing hostiles. Gray smoke billowed, obscuring their vision. "Go!" Marcus roared. Emma ran. She was small and fast, her legs pumping, Khan and Havoc flanking her like furry bodyguards. Marcus was right behind her, his rifle up, scanning for threats. David was last, walking backwards, firing controlled bursts into the smoke. Rounds snapped through the air. Marcus heard one pass close enough to feel the heat. Another kicked up gravel at Emma's feet. 20 yards to the tower. A hostile emerged from the smoke, his rifle coming up. Marcus shot him twice. The man fell. 10 yards. They reached the water tower's base. An old rusted ladder led up to the platform. "Climb," Marcus ordered. "Now." Emma grabbed the ladder and started up, her small hands finding each rung. Khan couldn't climb, but there was a maintenance elevator, basically a wooden platform with a hand-crank winch. Marcus shoved Khan onto it and started cranking furiously, hauling the dog up. David reached the base, still firing. "They're coming! 30 seconds!" Marcus got Khan to the top platform and pushed Emma and the dog into cover. He dropped the elevator back down for Havoc. David threw the dog onto the platform and Marcus cranked again, his muscles screaming. "Reaper, I'm dry!" David yelled, his rifle's magazine empty. Marcus tossed down his pistol. "Catch!" David caught it and fired 3 more rounds, buying seconds. Havoc reached the top. Marcus hauled David's dog into cover. "Your turn!" Marcus yelled. David grabbed the ladder and started climbing. Fast. Bullets sparked off the metal around him. He was 5 rungs from the top when a round hit his leg. David cried out and nearly fell. His grip on the ladder weakened. "Hold on." Marcus leaned out, grabbed David's vest, and hauled him up with pure adrenaline-fueled strength. He pulled his friend over the lip of the platform just as a volley of shots tore through the space David's body had occupied a second before. They collapsed on the platform, gasping, bleeding, but alive. Emma was pressed against the stone wall of the water tower's structure, both dogs flanking her. She looked at David's leg, blood soaking through his pants, and her face set with determination. "I can help," she said, crawling over. She pulled off her jacket and pressed it against the wound, applying pressure like she'd seen in movies. "Good," David gasped. You're doing good, kid." Marcus did a quick tactical assessment. They had high ground now. The water tower's stone construction would stop rifle rounds. They had limited ammunition, maybe 40 rounds total between the weapons they'd scavenged. 2 injured operators, 1 child, 2 brave but exhausted dogs, and below, 8 trained killers who were probably calling for their own reinforcements. He checked his watch. 8 minutes since the Broken Arrow call. The QRF should have been here by now. He keyed the radio. "Crystal Palace, Dalton. Where is my air support? We are engaged, taking casualties. I have a civilian child in the kill zone." Static. Then a different voice, older, colder. "Commander Dalton, this is Captain Morrison, JAG. You are hereby ordered to cease fire and surrender to Colonel Vickers. Any further resistance will be considered mutiny and treason. Do you copy?" Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. JAG, the Navy's lawyers. Someone had gotten to them, convinced them this was a rogue operation. "Negative," Marcus said, his voice steel. "I will not surrender my position to hostiles who ambushed and attempted to execute SEAL team operators. I will hold this ground until proper military authority, not compromised contractors, arrives to secure the situation." "Dalton," Captain Morrison's voice was harsh now. You are disobeying a direct order." "I'm protecting American citizens from a domestic threat," Marcus shot back. "If that's mutiny, so be it. Dalton out." He threw the radio down. David looked at him. "We just burned every bridge." "Yeah," Marcus agreed, "but we're still alive." Emma spoke up, her voice small but clear. "My grandma always says the truth protects you, even when it doesn't feel like it." Marcus looked at this remarkable child, this little girl who had saved them, who was now trapped in a war zone because of them, and he made a decision. "Emma," he said, "I need you to do something important. I need you to tell our story. If we don't make it, if Vickers wins, people need to know what really happened. Can you do that?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "You're not going to die." "Maybe not," Marcus said gently, "but just in case, you tell them we weren't the bad guys. You tell them we fought to protect you, okay?" "Okay," Emma whispered. Below, Vickers's voice echoed across the rail yard. "Dalton, you got nowhere to go. We've called in air assets. You'll be blown off that tower in 5 minutes." Marcus looked at David. "He's bluffing. He can't call in airstrikes on American soil without authorization from—" The sound that interrupted him was unmistakable, the rhythmic whump, whump, whump of helicopter rotors. But it wasn't one helicopter. It was 6, and they weren't Vickers's birds. They were UH-60 Blackhawks, painted matte black, flying in assault formation. And stenciled on their sides was a symbol Marcus knew as well as his own heartbeat: the Trident, SEAL Team. The cavalry had arrived. The Blackhawks came in fast and low, their rotor wash kicking up massive clouds of dust and debris. They didn't land. They hovered, and ropes deployed from their open doors. Black-clad figures fast roped down with the fluid, practiced precision of elite warriors who had done this 1,000 times in 1,000 hostile places. SEAL team operators hit the ground in a loose perimeter, weapons up, instantly dominating the space. Within seconds, the rail yard was flooded with America's most elite fighting force. And Vickers' men, for all their training and equipment, suddenly found themselves on the wrong end of an overwhelming tactical advantage. "Drop your weapons." The command came through a loudspeaker, backed by the implicit threat of 30 SEAL team operators who would end this fight in seconds if necessary. "You are surrounded by Naval Special Warfare units. Drop your weapons and get on the ground, now." To their credit, or maybe just their survival instinct, Vickers' men complied. Rifles clattered to the gravel. Hands went up. Bodies hit the dirt. Only Vickers himself remained standing, his bullhorn still in hand, his face twisted with rage. One of the helicopters settled to the ground, and a figure emerged. Even from the water tower, Marcus recognized him. Master Chief Grant Blackwood, the senior enlisted leader of their task force, a man with 30 years in the teams and a reputation that bordered on mythical. Blackwood walked directly up to Vickers, his posture casual, his hands empty. He was shorter than Vickers by 3 inches, but something about him made the colonel look small. "You, Raymond Vickers?" Blackwood's voice carried clearly in the sudden quiet. "I am," Vickers said, trying to recover his authority. "And you're interfering with a sanctioned civilian security operation. These men," he pointed at the water tower, "are rogue operators who kidnapped a child and—" Blackwood held up one hand, silencing him. "Son, I've been doing this job since before you got kicked out of Special Forces. I know what a rogue operation looks like, and I know what a frame job looks like. This is the latter." He pulled out a tablet and turned it to face Vickers. This is footage from a traffic camera on Route 14, showing your men loading Commander Dalton and Chief Chen into vehicles at 0230 hours, unconscious, bound. That's kidnapping." Vickers' face paled. "This," Blackwood continued, swiping to another video, "is audio from the tactical radio Commander Dalton took off one of your dead operators. That's your voice, Colonel, ordering the execution of federal operators. That's conspiracy to commit murder." He pocketed the tablet. "And this," he gestured to the rail yard, "is you caught red-handed in the middle of an illegal domestic military operation. So, why don't you shut your mouth, get on the ground, and wait for the federal agents who are going to put you in a cell for the rest of your life?" Vickers looked around, at the SEALs, at his own men flat on their faces, at the complete collapse of his operation. His hand moved toward his sidearm. 3 red laser dots appeared on his chest instantly. "Don't," Blackwood said quietly. "I'd really hate to explain to my wife why I let you commit suicide by SEAL." Vickers' hand stopped. Slowly, he lowered himself to the ground. Blackwood keyed his radio. "Dalton, you still alive up there?" Marcus grabbed his own radio. "Affirmative, Master Chief. 2 operators, 2 K9s, 1 civilian child. We have 1 casualty. Chen took a round to the leg. Needs medical ASAP. Medevac is inbound. Sit tight." 2 minutes later, a Navy corpsman was climbing the water tower ladder, a medical kit slung over his shoulder. He reached the platform and immediately went to David. "Hey, Doc," David said weakly. "Fancy meeting you here." "Can't let you out of my sight for 5 minutes," the corpsman replied, cutting away David's pant leg to expose the wound. "Through and through. You're lucky. Missed the bone and the artery. You'll be doing PT again in 6 weeks." While the corpsman worked, Marcus knelt beside Emma. "You okay?" Emma nodded, but her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally wearing off, the reality of what she'd experienced hitting her. "Is Mr. Chen going to be okay?" "He's tough," Marcus said. "He'll be fine." Khan and Havoc were both lying down, exhausted, their bodies pressing against Emma's legs. She had her hands buried in their fur, holding on. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "I need to know. Your grandmother, where is she? Is she safe?" "She's at home," Emma said. "She doesn't know I'm here. I was supposed to be at the library doing homework." Her voice broke. "She's going to be so scared." "We'll get word to her," Marcus promised. "We'll make sure she knows you're safe." Blackwood's voice came over the radio. "Dalton, you're clear to come down. Bring the girl." Marcus helped Emma to her feet. Together, they descended the water tower, first Emma, then Marcus, then the corpsman helping David. Khan and Havoc were lowered carefully on the platform lift. When they reached the ground, Emma was immediately wrapped in a thermal blanket by one of the Navy medical personnel. Khan and Havoc were taken to a veterinary specialist who had arrived with the convoy. The teams took care of their dogs. Marcus stood there, swaying slightly, the injuries and exhaustion finally catching up. Blackwood walked over and steadied him with one hand. "Hell of a day, Commander," Blackwood said. "Hell of a day," Marcus agreed. "The girl, Emma, she the one who freed you?" "She saved all of us," Marcus said, looking over to where Emma sat, wrapped in her blanket, a Navy corpsman checking her for injuries. "Bravest person I've ever served with." Blackwood followed his gaze and nodded slowly. "Ranger's daughter?" "How'd you know?" "Takes a warrior to raise a warrior," Blackwood said simply. 2 FBI vehicles pulled into the rail yard, followed by NCIS agents. The federal jurisdiction fight was about to begin. Who got to prosecute Vickers and his men? What charges would stick? How much would be classified? But that was above Marcus's pay grade now. He walked over to Emma. She looked up at him, and despite everything, she smiled. "We won," she said. "We did," Marcus confirmed. He sat down beside her, his body protesting every movement. "Emma, what you did today, most adults wouldn't have had that kind of courage. You saved our lives. Mine, David's, Khan's, Havoc's. We owe you everything." Emma looked down at her hands. "My dad always said courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. Your dad was a wise man." "I miss him," Emma said quietly. "Every day." "I know," Marcus said. "I lost people too. Brothers, friends, people I served with. And I used to think—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I used to think the best way to honor them was to keep fighting, to never stop, to never let the war end. But you taught me something today, Emma." "What?" "That sometimes the best way to honor the people we've lost is to protect the people who are still here, to stand up when it matters, to be the shield." Emma leaned against his shoulder, her small body finally relaxing. "Will I have to testify? In court? Against those men?" "Probably," Marcus said honestly. "But you won't be alone. David and I will be there, and we'll make sure everyone knows you're a hero." "I don't feel like a hero," Emma said. "I'm just a kid who found some people who needed help." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly what heroes say." An hour later, Emma was reunited with her grandmother, a tiny, fierce woman named Margaret who looked like she could have been a warrior herself in another life. She ran to Emma, scooped her up despite her age, and held her granddaughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I'm sorry, Grandma," Emma said, tears finally flowing. "I'm sorry I scared you." "Hush, child," Margaret said, stroking Emma's hair. "You're safe. That's all that matters." But Margaret looked up at Marcus, and in her eyes he saw understanding. She knew that Emma had inherited her father's courage, her father's instinct to run toward danger instead of away from it. "Thank you," Margaret said simply, "for keeping her safe." "She kept us safe," Marcus corrected. "Ma'am, your granddaughter is extraordinary. You should be very proud." Margaret looked at Emma, and her weathered face softened. "I am, every single day." They loaded Emma into an ambulance. Just for observation, the doctors said, but Marcus knew it was also to document everything that had happened. Evidence, testimony, justice. As the ambulance pulled away, Emma looked back through the rear window and waved. Marcus waved back. "That's one hell of a kid," David said, limping over on crutches, his leg wrapped in fresh bandages. "She's gonna do great things." "She already has," Marcus said. The debriefing took 3 days. Marcus and David were questioned by NCIS, by JAG, by the FBI, and by their own command. They went through every second of the operation, from the initial briefing to the ambush, to their rescue by Emma, to the final firefight. The evidence was overwhelming. The traffic camera footage, the audio recordings, the testimony of Emma Grace Sullivan, the bodies of the men who had attacked them. Colonel Raymond Vickers was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, illegal domestic military operations, and about 15 other federal crimes. His contracting company was dissolved. His assets were frozen. His carefully constructed, legitimate life collapsed like a house of cards. The people who had hired him, politicians, defense contractors, individuals who had wanted to send a message that SEAL teams weren't untouchable, scattered like rats from a sinking ship. Most would never be prosecuted. Their involvement was too shadowy, too deniable. But Vickers would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. That was enough. Commander Marcus Dalton and Chief Petty Officer David Chen were cleared of all wrongdoing. The mission briefing that had lured them into the trap was investigated, traced back to a dummy corporation, and declared a sophisticated enemy operation designed to neutralize high-value operators. Khan and Havoc recovered fully. Khan's ribs healed. Havoc's spirit, always resilient, bounced back almost immediately. Within a month, both dogs were back in training, ready for the next deployment. And Emma Sullivan, she testified before a closed congressional committee. She told her story with the same clear-eyed courage she'd shown in the rail yard. Senators who had spent their lives in politics listened to a 10-year-old girl and realized they were in the presence of something rare, pure, unshakable honor. When her testimony was over, the committee chairman, a retired Marine Corps general, stood and saluted her. Emma, not knowing what else to do, saluted back. 3 months later, Marcus Dalton stood in the bright Virginia sunshine, his dress uniform crisp and perfect, watching as a small ceremony unfolded on the parade ground at Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek. Emma Sullivan stood at attention, or as close to attention as a 10-year-old in a dress could manage, while Master Chief Blackwood read from an official citation. For extraordinary courage and selfless service in the face of grave danger, for actions that directly resulted in the preservation of life and the neutralization of a domestic threat, Emma Sullivan is hereby awarded the Navy's Certificate of Commendation for heroic civilian service. It wasn't a military medal. Emma wasn't a service member, but it was the highest honor the Navy could bestow on a civilian, and it came with something else. Blackwood held up a small wooden case. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a gold pin in the shape of the sealed trident. "This," Blackwood said, his voice carrying across the parade ground, "is not an official decoration. You didn't earn it through Bud S or combat deployments, but every man in this command wants you to have it. Because on the day you found 2 of our brothers and their K9 partners, you didn't hesitate. You didn't run. You stayed. You fought. And you proved that courage isn't about size or strength or training. It's about heart." He pinned the trident to Emma's dress just above her heart. "You're an honorary member of this team, Emma Sullivan, and you always will be." The assembled SEALs, more than 100 of them, the full complement of the task force, came to attention and saluted. Emma, tears streaming down her freckled face, saluted back. Margaret stood beside her granddaughter, her own eyes wet. Marcus stood with David, both in their dress blues, both feeling a profound sense of rightness about this moment. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the team compound. The SEALs, normally reserved and professional round outsiders, treated Emma like visiting royalty. They told her stories about her father. It turned out several of them had served with him in different units. They showed her the K9 kennels, introduced her to the other military working dogs, and Khan and Havoc, both fully recovered, never left her side. Emma sat on the grass outside the compound, both dogs lying beside her, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Marcus sat down beside her. "How you doing, kid?" "Good," Emma said. She touched the trident pin on her chest. "Is this really okay? Me having this?" "It's more than okay," Marcus said. "You earned it. You saved lives. You stood your ground. That's what the trident means." Emma was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her. "Will you come back after you deploy? Will I see you again?" Marcus had been thinking about this, about the connection he felt to this extraordinary child, about the responsibility he now carried. "Yeah," he said. "David and I talked about it. We're going to come back, visit, check in, make sure you're doing okay." He smiled. "If that's all right with your grandmother." "She likes you," Emma said. "She told me. She said you're a good man." "I try to be," Marcus said. "But Emma, I need you to understand something. What happened, what you did, it was incredible, but it was also incredibly dangerous. I don't want you to think you need to keep doing things like that. You don't need to save people. You don't need to be a hero." Emma looked at him, her blue eyes serious. "But what if people need saving?" Marcus felt something catch in his throat. This kid, this impossible, courageous kid. "Then you find a grown-up," he said gently. "You find someone who's trained. You find a sheepdog. You don't have to be the shield, Emma. You're allowed to just be a kid." "But what if there's no time to find a grown-up?" Emma asked. "What if it's just me, and someone needs help right then?" Marcus looked at her, at this child who had saved his life, and he knew there was no answer that would change who she was. Emma Grace Sullivan was a warrior, not because she wanted to be, but because her father had made her one, because the world had made her one. So instead of trying to change her, he gave her the tools to survive. "Then you do what your dad taught you," Marcus said. "You assess the situation. You look for advantages. You use your brain, not your strength. And if you have to act, if there's no other choice, you act fast, you act smart, and you don't hesitate." Emma nodded, absorbing this. "Like in the boxcar." Exactly like in the boxcar. David limped over, his leg still in a brace but healing well. He sat down on Emma's other side, and Havoc immediately put his head on David's lap. "So," David said, "Margaret tells me you're getting interested in computers. That right?" Emma brightened. "Yeah, I've been learning coding, Python, and some JavaScript." "Good," David said, "because when you're old enough, maybe 16 or so, I'm going to teach you real cyber operations, the kind of stuff our intelligence people use, how to track bad guys through their digital footprints, how to protect yourself online, how to be a weapon without ever throwing a punch." "Really?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Really," David confirmed. "Every warrior needs a specialty. Mine is close quarters battle. Marcus's is tactical leadership. Yours? I think yours is going to be intelligence. You're smart, Emma. Scary smart. We should use that." Marcus smiled. David was doing exactly what Marcus had hoped, giving Emma a path forward, a way to channel her courage and intelligence into something constructive. "But that's years away," Marcus said. "For now, you focus on school, on being a kid, on healing." Emma nodded. "I'm trying. But sometimes I still see it. The boxcar, the blood, the men with guns. That's normal," Marcus said quietly. "I still see things from missions I was on years ago. The images don't go away. But they get softer, distant, and you learn to carry them without letting them carry you." "How?" Emma asked. Marcus thought about it, about Yemen, about the choice he'd made, about the weight he'd carried until a little girl in a rail yard had reminded him what he was really fighting for. "You find purpose," he said. "You find the people who matter. You protect them. You love them. You make sure that the bad stuff you've seen doesn't make you hard or cold or cruel. You let it make you compassionate, aware, strong enough to help others." Emma looked up at him. Like you. Like your dad, Marcus corrected. I'm just trying to follow his example. They sat there in the Virginia sunshine. 2 Navy SEALs, 2 military working dogs, and 1 10-year-old girl who had become an honorary member of the most elite fighting force in the world. And, for that moment, everything was right. 5 years passed. Emma Grace Sullivan grew into a remarkable young woman. She excelled in school, particularly in computer science and mathematics. True to his word, David Chen began teaching her cybersecurity basics when she turned 15. Marcus visited twice a year, always bringing stories from deployments he couldn't talk about in detail, but that Emma understood in her bones. Khan retired from service at age 9, too old for the demanding work of combat operations. Marcus adopted him officially, and the dog lived out his remaining years in comfort and honor. When Khan finally passed, Marcus scattered his ashes at the rail yard where he'd met Emma, a place that had changed from a site of trauma to a place of redemption. Havoc continued to serve with David until the dog was 7, then also retired. David brought him to visit Emma every few months, and Havoc always remembered her. His tail would start wagging from across the yard when he saw her. Margaret passed away when Emma was 14, quietly in her sleep. Emma was devastated. But at the funeral, Marcus and David were there, in their dress uniforms standing honor guard. They weren't family by blood, but they were family by choice, by shared experience, by the bonds forged in fire. Emma went to live with her aunt in Richmond, a kind woman who supported Emma's education and her unusual relationships with the 2 Navy SEALs who had become her honorary uncles. When Emma turned 17, she received a letter. It was on official Naval Academy letterhead. She had been accepted to the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis. Her essay, about the day she found 2 SEALs and their K9 partners in a boxcar, about courage and sacrifice and the meaning of service, had been read by the admissions board. They had called her references. Master Chief Blackwood had told them, "If that girl applies, you accept her. She's already proven herself in ways most of your graduates never will." Emma called Marcus immediately. "I got in," she said, her voice shaking. "Annapolis, I got in." "I knew you would," Marcus said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "Your dad would be so proud, Emma. I'm so proud." "Will you be there?" she asked. "When I graduate, in 4 years?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Marcus promised. 4 years later, Emma Grace Sullivan stood at attention in Tecumseh Court at the Naval Academy, her uniform perfect, her class ring gleaming on her finger. She was 21 years old, graduating near the top of her class, commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy. And in the audience, watching her with faces that showed every hard mile they'd traveled, sat Commander Marcus Dalton and Senior Chief David Chen, both decorated heroes, both retired now from active service but still serving as instructors and mentors. Beside them, in special sections reserved for VIPs, sat several military working dogs and their handlers, a tribute to Khan and Havoc, who had started this whole impossible story. When Emma received her diploma and commission, Marcus and David stood and saluted. She saluted back, tears streaming down her face. After the ceremony, they found her in the crowd. She ran to them, proper military bearing forgotten for a moment, and hugged them both. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for believing in me, for teaching me, for being there." "Always," Marcus said. "You know what your orders are?" David asked. Emma pulled out the envelope she'd been carrying. She opened it and read the assignment. Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Intelligence Division. She looked up at them, her eyes wide. Is this... Did you? We made some calls, David admitted. But you earned it, Emma. That assignment is merit-based. You're going to be supporting SEAL team operations, tracking bad guys, keeping operators safe, using that brilliant mind of yours to save lives. Just like you saved ours, Marcus added. Emma looked at the orders again, then at the two men who had changed her life, who had taken a traumatized child and shown her that courage and honor and purpose could heal even the deepest wounds. I'm going to make you proud, she said. You already have, Marcus replied. Epilogue. The message. 10 years after that day in the rail yard, Emma Sullivan, now Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, one of the Navy's top intelligence analysts, stood before a group of newly commissioned ensigns at the Naval Academy. She had been asked to give a speech, to share her story, to inspire the next generation. She looked out at the young faces and saw herself at that age, eager, uncertain, searching for purpose. When I was 10 years old, she began, I found two Navy SEALs and their K9 partners in an abandoned train car. They were bound, beaten, left for dead by enemies who thought they could break America's warriors. And I had a choice. She paused, letting that sink in. I could have run. I could have looked away. I could have told myself it wasn't my problem. I was just a kid. Someone else would help. She smiled. But my father, a man I barely got to know before he died, had taught me something. He taught me that courage isn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the best trained. Courage is about seeing someone who needs help and deciding that you're going to be the one who helps them. Even if you're scared, even if you're small, even if the odds are impossible. She looked at each face. Every single one of you's going to face a moment like that. A moment where you have to choose between the easy path and the right path, between safety and service, between being a bystander and being a shield. Her voice strengthened. And I'm here to tell you that choosing the right path is hard. It's terrifying. It will cost you sleep and peace and sometimes even pieces of yourself. She touched the SEAL trident pin she still wore on her dress uniform. Unofficial, unauthorized, but tolerated because of who she was and what she'd done. But it's worth it, because on the other side of that choice, you'll find something that no amount of money or comfort or safety can give you. You'll find purpose. You'll find honor. You'll find out who you really are. She straightened her shoulders. Those two SEALs I found, Commander Marcus Dalton and Senior Chief David Chen, they saved my life just as much as I saved theirs. They showed me that even when you're broken, even when you think you have nothing left to give, there's always a reason to fight. There's always someone worth protecting. She looked directly into the eyes of the young ensigns. You are America's shield. You are the ones who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. And someday, when you're at your lowest moment, when you think you can't go on, someone unexpected will appear. Maybe it's a brother or sister in arms. Maybe it's a civilian you're protecting. Maybe it's just the memory of why you started this journey. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper, but it carried. And that person, that moment, will remind you that what we do matters, that honor is real, that courage is real, that one person in one moment can change everything. She came to attention and saluted the young officers. Go forth and be warriors. Go forth and be shields. And never, ever forget that the greatest weapon you carry isn't your rifle or your training or your tactics. It's your heart, the part of you that refuses to quit, the part that stands up when it would be easier to kneel, the part that saves lives. The ensigns rose as one and saluted back. And in that moment, Emma Grace Sullivan, who had once been just a scared little girl with wild red hair, became exactly what her father had raised her to be: a warrior, a protector, a hero. Closing message. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Was it Emma's courage in freeing the SEALs, Khan and Havoc's loyalty, or the moment when the cavalry arrived and justice was served? We read every comment. This story reminds us that courage doesn't depend on size, age, or training. It depends on character. Emma was just a 10-year-old girl, but she had the heart of a warrior because her father had taught her that honor and service matter more than safety. How many of us would have the courage to run toward danger instead of away from it? How many of us would risk everything to save strangers? Military working dogs like Khan and Havoc serve alongside our nation's bravest warriors, giving their loyalty, their courage, and sometimes their lives to keep us safe. They are heroes without recognition, warriors without medals, and men like Commander Dalton and Chief Chen carry burdens we can barely imagine. They make split-second decisions with life-and-death consequences. They sacrifice time with their families. They put their bodies and minds through hell, all so we can sleep safely at night. But perhaps the greatest lesson from this story is that sometimes the people we think need saving are the ones who end up saving us. Marcus and David went into that rail yard as warriors. They came out as better men, reminded of why they fight, given purpose by a child who refused to give up. If you've ever felt small, remember Emma. If you've ever felt powerless, remember that one person with courage can change everything. If you've ever doubted whether honor and sacrifice still matter in this world, remember the SEALs who refused to surrender even when every advantage was against them. Heroes walk among us. Some wear uniforms. Some have 4 legs and fur. And some are 10-year-old girls with wild red hair who see people in trouble and decide, I'm going to help. God bless our service members, our military working dogs, and everyone who chooses courage over comfort. See you in the next story.